call this meeting to order at 9:30. I am Vice Chair Matthew Lehane. Paul is away on travel and Jamie is also unable to make it today. So I will call this meeting to order and we'll jump into roll call and determination of quorum.
Paul Aniello, Jamie Jackson, Matthew Lehane.
Here.
Assam Amin.
Here.
Kathy Coffey. Here. Adam Derrick.
Here, online.
Great. Melody Fowler. Here. Amy Garbarini. Kate Gibson. Here. Leon Hughes. Is also online. Daniel Koenig. Kathy Wood. Stephen Minor. Bill Montgomery.
Here.
Bob Schneider. Rodney White.
Here.
Chris Clark.
Here.
Josh Crump.
Here.
Great, and we have a quorum.
All right, awesome. Thank you. We'll move into item number 3, approval of the May 5th, 2025 Technical Advisory Committee agenda. And this is an action item.
Chair, we just have a request from Paul to table the 7P item TAC methodology. Says it's not urgent. It's the item which we asked everyone to give us feedback on. And it's based on the decision of the policy committee.
All right, well, that's fine. We'll still go through that item, but we will not have it as an action item today.
Agreed.
There. All right, do I have a motion for approval with the update to 7B to remove it as an action item?
I'll make the motion.
All right, a motion and a second. All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, awesome. We'll move into item number 4, public comment. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Staff will also read comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting.
So George Washington District, Stafford County, 12 England Run Lane, Fredericksburg. As a member of the TAC committee, I know that there's going to be a discussion what took place at the policy board meeting. But I wanted to just kind of add the caveat that TAC did make a presentation to the policy board as well. After many, and Dr. Wright can attest to the many years, it seems like years, hours that we wound up discussing the river crossing. We had to come up with a kind of a combination proposal for our recommendation for the river crossing, essentially to use Celebrate Virginia Parkway to travel down that 3 miles into Cannon Ridge. But then instead of cutting across where option C did, we would avoid the use of Greenbank Road and cut across into Cannon Ridge, go due south, and then head east and cut across the river where the option D bridge essentially would exist if that proposal had been. So instead of the 5 different options that were originally proposed, we modified what we called TAC option C and cut across there. We also added a option within the option that actually cut due south at that point where it was going to go east to head across the river, and added the possibility of also going due south across the Rappahannock into Spotsylvania County, ultimately connecting at some point with Route 3, essentially providing what we consider to be the chance to do either both simultaneously or both, but not necessarily at the same time, or if things became problematic with where option D is, potentially go south into Spotsylvania instead, as an alternative. The presentation that was done by MBI that you're basically going to be discussing later on did mention that the option that avoided Greenbank like option D did, but did use Celebrate, and then did come down where our proposal was viable. And so it's, I think, one of the things that should still possibly be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes one item, approval of the April 7th, 2025 TAC meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion. We have a second. We have a second. All right, any
Yep.
further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move on to item number 6, tip amendment and modifications. We have 3 tip amendments on the agenda today.
All right, good morning. We have actually only one tip amendment right now.
Public comment.
Oops. That is adding driver barriers, to Fredericksburg Go's vehicles. So they're, amending FRT 003. And that is basically a miscellaneous catch-all and so the amendment is to provide those driver barriers for their vehicles. The other two are actually asking to direct public comment. One is FRT 0001, and that is basically Fredericksburg Go's general operating budget for the upcoming year, as well as a resolution that is actually removing an item from the tip. Fredericksburg Go has decided not to work with its driving simulator project. So they are removing those funds and then reallocate kind of the local match for other things at a future time.
All right, does anyone have any further comments or questions on any of these 3 items? If not, I will take a motion.
Yeah.
Or we can
I
vote, sorry.
suggest you do.
Vote on them at one time, yeah.
And unless somebody has an issue with
Yeah.
or a comment on one of them, I suggest you just do them all together. I'm curious because there's a lacuna in my knowledge. I'm not sure. We have to have public comment if we remove an item.
Yes, in addition and removal of a tip item is.
There's the answer.
All right, do I have a motion for approval of these 3 items?
Submission.
I have a motion and a second. All right, awesome. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, moving on to item number 7A, review of April Policy Committee and the Fampo Rappahannock River alternative.
All right, so this was a request to do a quick synopsis of the river crossing discussion at the last policy committee meeting. We had 3 items kind of come up. One, the TAC presented their kind of modified option C proposal. We had a update from the consultants, kind of reworking what their recommendations were. And then we had a short presentation from the city over the basics of the technology overlay district. So we can move on to the next slide. So for the consultants piece, they kind of decided to not necessarily rework the kind of their analysis they did, but reorganize it in a way that would produce a outcome for how they are making their recommendation for that. So they're going to be looking at the travel, the environmental, public input, and kind of the cumulative rankings. And they simplified this versus the former big green, yellow, red sheet. They kind of simplified it into a hierarchical ordering. So next slide. So they looked at travel demand, traffic delay, and environmental factors, and basically ranked each one of the options kind of against each other. It's like, okay, which one's above which one, and they move forward. And you can kind of see that in some cases, say option D is a little worse for wear, but all the other options, C, B, and A, they both have their pros and cons, and they're kind of shake up fairly close to each other. Next slide. And then they took the public input and they kind of did it 2 ways. They kind of looked at it and said, okay, what's the average score for all the options? What happened was option B1 actually kind of came out on top there. The interesting thing is that it was 4th in the priority votes. So whoever was voting number 1, it was actually below option D. But its average is kind of always the second option, kind of boosted its score. And you saw kind of an interesting shakeout where the average support rank was different from what folks selected as their number 1 option. And what the consultants decided to do was actually advance both of these metrics as a scoring option so that you got weights. And for them, it resulted more of in a tiebreaker later on. Next option. So once they put everything in, they gave scoring across the board. And eventually they said lower score is the best. And their recommended option coming out was option 1. However, they basically said options A, B1, B2, and C don't have any critical flaws. They can all advance, and option D is not recommended at this point in time. It should be screened out. They noted that option D is at least the northern section of option D is what's causing it to screen out, particularly the impacts on Green Bay. But that was their recommendations coming out of the policy committee. Next slide. Then the city of Fredericksburg, or sorry, this is CTAC. So the TOD and automatically flood city of Fredericksburg. The CTAC provided their presentation, Al has given the summary, but we just provided the map overlay of where they were proposing to run things across. Of course, they say use Celebrate Virginia and use more of the option D that cuts across at the southernmost point here, and then uses this big tract of land as a way to connect to or actually that would be called East Silver Boulevard. And then they also said it could eventually also be an option for another even western river crossing that would eventually get. And finally, next slide. The city of Fredericksburg provided the update and particularly the language in it. So in the TOD, there is actually a language in the code here that says it's encourages to reserve the right of way for a river crossing. Yeah, standing up, so he's going to provide additional comments about points.
Finish?
I'll hand it over.
Okay, just. Like, if you go back one slide. So we're invited to meet with the consultant who is working on, or not the consultant, the developer, who is working on a potential data center land here. These are separate land parcels, and this one that, if I can draw 2 lines there, this one over here is basically useless to the data center developers, because this has the wetland and it has 2 streams running through it. So they've been asked not to develop on this portion because of the wetland and the environmental issues in this particular piece, which does mean that a portion of this land available to them is not really available to them. And if you look at this portion, this blue line sort of cuts up this portion significantly. So if the data center goes ahead, this may have to be dealt with differently. And also, if I'm not mistaken, we're not concerned about bringing in another roadway at this point because of the traffic lights here and here, and the fact that you could. So this, I'm guessing, whichever options get chosen, if an option gets chosen that must come in over here somewhere, this is going to need some reworking in terms of the future. But anyway, we don't know yet what the policy committee's view is.
So yes, we've had to follow up the presentation to the policy committee, basically outline that there's language that makes it available and it's being accepted. Next slide. So the final task where the policy committee is basically going to take the items back, discuss it with their own jurisdiction and fellow representatives to kind of work out and hammer out a item. The consultants kind of need to say, pick one, it doesn't lock us into that thing for all time, but it is something that allows them to finish out the scope of their projects and provide us with sketches. And so we're kind of really at that stage. So I think we're going to be going to where we are invited to provide that to some networking.
And John, that'll be provided by the end of June. End of June.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see it at August committee meetings.
Oh, sorry, the final design drawings? No, that one's going to be about 2 months after the localities select one or the policy committee.
So, okay, so you're looking for policy committees, not localities.
Yeah.
The policy committee members said that they intend to vote on
Yeah.
the alignment in their June meeting. And between now and the June meeting, I know that workshops in the different localities are being lined up to discuss the options. So there's a workshop already booked in the city of Fredericksburg. And I believe that the Stafford supervisors are working on an item to discuss it in their board. I don't know which meeting though. And Spotsylvania, I think, will, but I haven't had any information.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything.
If you need any materials from us, whatever it is, if you can let us know what it is you need.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll see something by September then, assuming an option moves forward. All right, does anyone have any other questions?
The key thing, I mean, I just frankly from my side as FAMPO administrator, the key for us as a staff is we're not in favor or opposed to any option, but we do need the localities to agree on the same option. Because if they don't agree on the same option, then it all becomes pretty pointless. We can't have a bridge shown in the one comprehensive plan over here and the other comprehensive plan has the bridge over here, because how do you proceed on that basis? So the key for us is pick whatever the jurisdictions or the policy committee want, but if you can all pick the same option, that would be enormously helpful.
I guess I did have one question. This is regards to your all's coordination with VDOT when you get into the sketch and estimate. Do we know what sort of requirements there will be for, say, smart scale?
The language that we are getting is that we're going to try to present something that is a smart scale ready application, but since the initial kind of contract with Michael Baker was drafted and what smart scale resources have changed, so we've been working in conjunction to try to make sure that we get as close to that as possible.
But we don't have additional budget available, so
Yeah.
smart scale has changed and it's going to change again, presumably
Not in terms of the cost
in
estimate.
December, and so we'll do what's in the scope, which is paid for. But if there are items that are not paid for, we will have to
Right.
deal with that.
So I guess that's what I'm getting at. I would say don't proceed to doing a sketch or cost estimate if you don't have enough money to make it ready for smart scale. Get the money first and then do that. Otherwise, you'll have something that's only half as much as you need. You may never get the rest of the money to complete it for smart scale, and that's kind of useless.
Will we
So,
would even do any of that if the policy committee doesn't reach agreement?
understood. This is assuming the policy committee.
So we
reaches
first
agreement.
have to reach agreement, and then they will work on those items. But if the scope does not include some changes that have already happened in smart scale, then we're going to come back to you and ask for money. There's no other money. If the smart scale changes are still yet to come, well, we can't wait for smart scale. We might wait for, we don't know what they're going to do in the future.
Yeah,
Brooke
just,
said here that she hopes they don't change the criteria of the cycle and let it settle. And I know that we're working on things that we're not happy about in this cycle. So it's a moving target. It always is, unfortunately.
yeah, I guess the comment was just, I just asked that we be careful not to proceed too far down the path of spending the rest of the money if we're not gonna be able to complete all of it for smart scale. Just keep that in mind as we go forward. Do I have any other further comments or questions on this topic? Before we move on. All right, if not, we'll move on to item 7B. John. This is CMAC Sierra SDBG methodology. And a reminder, we are not voting on this anymore as an action item. This is just for discussion today.
So what's linked and presented in the agenda today is the clean version. Previous time meeting, we had sent out both a clean and a red line version, request for comments, or if anybody noted any changes that needed to be made. I did not receive any comments, and so I proceeded with the red line comments, or proceeded with the clean version with a couple little small grammatical issues that popped up through reading. So this is basically the final draft waiting adoption for approval for the next round of CMAC STBG award cycle. So this includes the urbanized and population hybrid split. I think that's on that page. 18 through 23 is the new methodology. for the jurisdictions, the one thing that is still scored is the transit, just in case you have multiple transit entities both apply in the same year. There's a scoring mechanism that is retained from the old methodology. And so this is the new methodology.
If, just to kind of explain what John just said about transit, we are not going to be doing the full scoring for the non-transit projects because it's up to the localities to decide how to allocate the funding. What we are going to do is do all the air quality stuff and the congestion items that are in legislation, which say you or CMAC have to comply with the following conditions. So we're going to screen all those based on all those conditions. So there's some work for us there. For the transit options, because it's not allocated to a particular transit operator. So we didn't divide the money up between, say, OmniRide and BRE and Fred, because we didn't do that. We still have to score the transit options unless there's one unless. And the unless is if there is only one applicant and the applicant applies for equal to or less than the amount of money available. Because if they're applying not more than what's available and there's only one applicant, then doing the scoring does become a little bit pointless. So we are preparing to do the scoring for the transit items because we're assuming that there will be times, some years, when there will be multiple applications and we will need to score them and we will need to do the whole process. But there may be individual years when there's only one applicant and they're applying for less than the money available, in which case it just is pointless to do.
I did have one question. Do you guys have any discussion with the policy committee with regards to how, for instance, for the Stafford TMA, if money is going to be split between active transportation and transit, or if it's just one pot or whatever?
We've not done it yet. This hasn't been back to the policy committee for a
Okay.
while now. So it's out for public comment right now, and we intended to make that known to the policy committee at the meeting when we get this to the policy committee. But seeing as we're only discussing it and not doing anything about it, it'll, depend on whether we present it again to the policy committee. And that is,
The Stafford TMA kind of things have not changed from previous
Yeah.
years. They
So
are as is, and we just incorporated the new methodology.
So we'll need to assign money towards transit projects. We'll need to assign money towards active transportation projects.
the vice chair just asked that we reminded the policy committee of that.
A very specific reminder of maybe you guys could go through and say, here's how much each locality is projected. I understand, but projected to get in FY 31, it needs to go to X, Y, and Z. A reminder, active transportation, transfer the Stafford TMA. And then for the other stuff, is it all just for the other kind of grouping coming to the localities? Is that just however we want to use it, or are we still looking at percentages for active transportation and roadway?
No,
That's just everything. That's what I thought. Okay.
for the locality amounts, they can choose to provide that for transit or bike ped or roadways
Whatever you like. Yep.
or whatever.
That was
right?
my understanding. Okay.
And we don't tell you what to do with it, but we tell you to keep within the law. So you must,
Yes.
for CMAC, you can't have roadway capacity expansions. That's not allowed.
All right. Awesome. Any further?
Yes,
Yeah.
sure. So if we're tabling it to June, and when do you envision it going back to the policy after we vote?
So I would be very happy to show to you in June one last time and take it to the policy committee in June if that's what you all would like. I think Paul just indicated that you might want some more time to just study
Yes,
in some more detail.
correct.
It is a long document. It's always been a long document. It's
Yeah.
actually shorter now than it used to be. So hopefully by next meeting, you have all had a chance, 2 months to
Yeah.
study it
Well,
again.
we got rid of one whole document, so. Sounds good.
And most of the methodology, yeah.
Yeah. All right, if there's nothing else, we move on to item 7C, endorsing resolution 2544 for the FY 2631 CMAC, STBG, and CR allocations for the public comment period.
Yes, so we're basically looking for the big spreadsheet coming out. Next slide. And this is just kind of a quick summary of what we have done for it. Just as a reminder, we've had about $2 million cut across 5 or 6 years. And as a result, we had to absorb some of that in the outer years in FY31. So we have about $3.5 million left over, which we normally have about $5.5 million. So you can see where the $2 million was kind of absorbed. In iterations previously, often we're dropping the next or the current fiscal year from our spreadsheets. In previous iterations of our spreadsheet, we included it just because that was a untouched money and money was moved in and out of those years. And now that is now all condensed into previous years. And we've gone ahead and rebalanced so that we have less remaining or no remaining funds available in our bottom item. Next slide. We took the recommendations from TAC, the mining green space improvements were accelerated request. We moved long-range transportation planning support into the FAMPO set aside. That's different from the scenario planning. The small remainder money was distributed to small projects. The only thing that got a weird little increase was carbon reduction funds for bus replacement, just because it was the only available project for that fiscal year that could accept those funds. Otherwise, it just would have remained been unused. So it's $4,000 bus replacements. Finally, the new post bridge modeling was also removed. So those are the changes. That was a PC request. So we incorporated the TAC request and PC. And if we go to the next slide, might be a day late, but there isn't a dollar missing yet in the spreadsheets that I've noticed. So
May the 5th be with
yeah.
you. All right, well, with that, does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns, notes, any items on this? This is an action item for the public comment period. We are required to move forward with something.
We have a chat from Dan Koenig from MTA. It's not necessarily about this, I think. But since he's unable to stay past 10. Sorry, I know this isn't on the agenda right now, but
So that's, has he emailed that to me? Jeez. I don't want to deal with this in the meeting. Won't you just,
okay.
Yeah, I
It
think
wasn't
we're-
on the agenda. I simply just was pointing it out because Ian, you had asked, and I know others in Virginia have been concerned about the apportionment. So they were
thank
published
you, Dan.
today.
Thank you, Dan. Is somebody going to email us, do you think?
I don't know how I put a link to the website where you can, see the tables. I don't know how it will be communicated this year, but you can see the the apportionment tables in the link and see, yep, there it is. So
Thank you very much. Don't click on it now.
yeah,
Thanks very much,
wasn't
Dan.
trying to
Appreciate it.
hijack or disrupt the meeting, and I'll just wanted to point that out.
No,
And
no,
Thank you, we appreciate it.
no
We were
problem.
waiting on it, so.
It's very important information, so I'm very keen to look at it, but we can look at it after the meeting. Thanks so much for sending that.
Yep, and you're welcome to follow up with me, Ian, if you have any other questions or need anything else. Sorry, I
Thank you
can't
very
stay.
Thank
No
you.
worries. Thank you. We appreciate your time.
And Mr. Chair, this is just for the public hearing, and we'll talk about the method, the allocations after this.
Yeah, so this is for the public hearing. We'll have an opportunity to vote on it at the June meeting before it goes to policy later in June for final approval.
The chair, we did get 2 email requests from Paul,
Yeah.
and I don't know if Rodney wants to mention those now because they would require a recommendation from the TAC if you wish to proceed with those items.
Yes.
So we're not going to. It is going for public comment, and we'll come back here. But I just think maybe you just want to put those on the record so that the TAC can weigh in if they wish to on any of those items.
And one was the scenario planning, the 78,000. As Paul mentioned at the last meeting, Spotsylvania wasn't in support of that. Our board members wasn't in agreement with that. And we wanted to see that removed. And we were hoping that could be taken into consideration. Ian, as your discussions with Paul, correct?
Yeah, so there were 2 emails from Paul. The one said that they were not in agreement with the $70,000 allocated for scenario planning. Unfortunately, Paul's not here to explain. We did present the item to the policy committee meeting when we discussed the WP at the policy committee meeting. And there was no objection from anyone in the policy committee meeting, including Spotsylvania reps, to us having the item at the policy committee meeting. We did get a question at the policy committee meeting saying that one of the Spotsylvania members felt that we should be including the planning staff of the counties and the city if we were to do a scenario planning workshop, because they know more about the future developments that are coming in each county and the city, and that they were the ones who would know more about that than the elected officials. So that was a comment we got from Spotsylvania. We didn't get any comments saying in the last policy committee meeting when we mentioned it that we should not do this item. In fact, nobody objected to it. However, it's not been approved yet. The policy committee may this month say that they wish to remove it, but we didn't get a request to remove it. The other thing that we got from Paul, that they feel that the $100,000 we've allocated to do the long range transportation plan is too low. Now we spent on the 2050 LRTP $500,000. I only put in $100,000 this round because I'm aware that money is fairly limited this round. However, I do take Paul's point that maybe that is too little. So maybe I've been overly cautious and maybe it's going to cost us more than 100. Paul's email suggested that we should add $50,000 to 2026 budget to forestall us running out of funds to do the LRTP, because it is going to occur over 2 years. So those were the two comments that we received in writing from the Spotsylvania, from Paul, the chair of the TAC.
That's correct.
And we as staff don't just make random decisions about it. We made a proposal. The $100,000 was our proposal. I think Paul is saying over the 2 years, it should be 150,000, and we should put 50 in FY26 and 100 in FY27. So the 100 is there already. It will be up to the TAC to decide whether they wish to make a recommendation to do that. And it would be up to the TAC to decide whether they wish to make a recommendation on removing the scenario planning. I would then take those recommendations to the policy committee and ask them if they would support those recommendations. Just my only question, and sorry, Paul isn't here, but my only question about not doing scenario planning is that I would then like a recommendation as to what we do with the chapter on scenario planning in the long range plan when we write it the following year. The long range plan, to my knowledge, has always had a chapter on scenario planning. And the last scenario planning that was done as a proper workshop was done in 2012. And apparently there were issues with the way it was done. Scenario planning, that chapter that exists right now, I basically wrote on my laptop. VDOT kindly agreed to do some modeling work for us to look at future scenarios. And then I just wrote the chapter. And my point is that I don't think that's the right way to do scenario planning at all. But we were stuck. I inherited the LRTP halfway through the process. And so I did what I could with what was available. Question is, from my side, if we don't do scenario planning and have a proper workshop with locality staff, like maybe the chief planner or his deputy of each jurisdiction, the chief transportation planner or their nominated person from each jurisdiction, what do we do with the scenario planning chapter? That's my question. Do we remove it? We're not required. Paul is correct. We're not required to have a scenario planning chapter. There's no law that says we must. It's generally done, but it's not a requirement. So do we just remove the chapter? Or do we find some other way of doing it? Or do we spend less money on it? Or I don't know what the I understand the concern that we're in a difficult financial year. We are because of changes federally. What I don't know is practically what we then do with that chapter.
Well, why don't we go around the room? Do you want to kind of focus on the the allocations as it stands today? Does anyone have any comments on the requests by Spotsylvania County for the couple of changes? Which is essentially the removal of scenario planning and adding additional funding to LRTP. I guess, does the city have any comments? Nothing this time. Okay. BRE. Okay. Fredericksburg go. King George. VDOT. Okay. I mean, I'm in the same boat. Yeah.
I support scenario planning.
Yeah.
Only because it helps provide direction for the update of the LRTP. But if the greater group is not supportive, then I think you just need to find a more cost-effective way when you're updating to keep it into consideration.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same boat. I don't have any further comments. I'm comfortable with where we're at right now with the proposals that Fanful staff have put on the table. And based off the schedules of the policy committee, it seems like we're in a good place.
Do you have that on the additional 50,000 for the LRTP?
Not at this time, no. If that, I'd ask that you guys do a little bit more research. And if you guys find that you think you're gonna need more money, then come back with a request in June with a proposal on how to add more money. You know my opinions about it. We add a lot more money for planning anyways, but yeah.
So then with that in mind, do you want to endorse the resolution directing public comment of the packet?
Yep.
Because we're not at the stage of deciding that those are the final dollars. We are at the stage where we do need to start public comment because we need to get, you know, it's a long period of time and we want to get it done.
So do we have a motion for resolution 2544 for just the public comment period? Reminder, this is not approval. This is just putting it out for public comment.
And John, I don't have the resolution right in front of me, but does it say 21 days or 30 days?
I think it's your 20 days.
20 days, okay, and I'm fine with it. What's
Okay.
up?
Do I have a motion? All right, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second. All right. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Awesome. Well, that's the last thing we'll vote on today. So we will move on to item 7D FY26 TAP locality candidate projects.
Just when we all, I know,
I know what you were gonna say.
I'm on the wrong item. Do you want to take this one? Should I take this one?
Lita?
Oh, Lena's.
Lena's taking
Yeah,
it.
I got it. Sorry, I was just.
Lena has as well.
I just saw nobody stand up, so I was like, hey,
She's
hang on a minute.
standing up.
All right. Yeah, so this is just a review of all locality projects that are in the pre-application stage for TAP funding. And this is just a reminder about the Transportation Alternatives Program. It's to fund projects for the non-motorized travel network. It has a biennial allocation period, and it's a federal reimbursement program with 80% federal funds, 20% local match. And this is just a review of the timeline. So again, right now, pre-application is open and those are due end of May 30th. And then the projects are just being screened before the actual application period opens and is due. Those projects are supposed to be submitted by September 15th. Yeah, you can see the rest of that timeline. So these are the Spotsylvania projects that I have. It's a shared use path on Sensation Road, Joanna Point Drive sidewalk. Stafford, there's these 4 projects, pedestrian improvements, including a sidewalk by Falmouth Elementary. Sorry, I don't know why I started at the bottom. I'm working my way up. Barrett Heights Road sidewalk, improvements around Chatham Heights Road and Kings Highway, like right across the Chatham Bridge from Fredericksburg. And then pedestrian improvements at Mine Road and Green Spring Drive up in northern Stafford, kind of just off of Garrisonville Road. Next, these are the projects for Caroline County. Down kind of by the Carmel Church area at 1 and Rogers Clark Road, there's project for sidewalk and better crossing of Route 1 there, and I think Rogers Clark, is that Boulevard? I don't remember. Is that right? And then a new sidewalk from Pine Drive to Ladysmith Road, also on Route 1. Finally, Fredericksburg, these have been, this list has been edited to 2 projects that they will be submitting. And that's the Canal Street Bicycle Boulevard connector and the downtown study implementations for safety countermeasures around downtown, I think including a raised intersection at Prince Edward and
Charles and Williams were the former site of the auction block, kind of turning that into a memorial of that, and then also doing intersection.
Okay, thank you, yeah. So the next steps are, we just want to present all these projects to the policy committee and get a resolution of support. I guess FAMPO isn't submitting these are the locality projects, but for the regional support of them, and then there's more information here, should be in the packet, and there's also more information about the projects in this slideshow where I have all the detailed drawings, if you all wanted to get into that.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you, leader.
Thank you, Lee.
We are reviewing the TAC applications with the coordination with the about the others. So please reach out to Rachel Inman. She's been trying to get people to coordinate that so that we have some more awareness. We've already started our meetings to go over the applications. So if there are concepts and applications, please let us know so that we can, make sure that things are ready for that pre-app deadline.
Okay. And finally, from me, thanks to leader for that. Need the correct wording to the resolutions. So just would you reach out to Carrie and leader with wording of exactly what the project's called, exactly what you want us to put in the letter of recommendation, all that kind of things. We will present those letters to the policy committee in June at the June meeting. So we do need to make sure we get those correct.
All right, any further comments or questions on this item? All right, a reminder, you have until the end of the month, so pre-applications are due. All right.
Talked to me that yesterday.
Yeah. I was thinking it was Sunday, why am I, but yeah. I get it. Yes. All right, well, Carrie, Carrie, you're up with the Smart Scale Workshop Summary, item 7E.
Okay, so we have had a few workshops recently on Smart Scale. The first one was given to us by OIP with Brooke Jackson, but we had a couple of follow-ups. So this is our basically summary and next steps. Next slide. So this was a staff level discussion. Folks who are normally working on Smart Scale. We wanted to discuss our takeaways from the OIP workshop. Next slide. So on the agenda for that, we had 4 topics that we discussed. How can we improve our applications from our side? What are our staff resources around the region collectively to do so? What were the possible next steps we wanted to take to all of you for consideration? And what concerns did we want to take to the CTV? So these were basically the comments that we collected from the folks who went to the workshop. This is not necessarily FAMPO's feelings about the matter, just what we collected. So the first one, how can we improve our applications? So applicant based, we can request less than 45 million or better, less than 27 million, average HPP award in the last round. We can apply for more mature projects, i.e. some work has already been done on them, there's less contingency we have to worry about. We can target the problem area in the scope, not the whole corridor, which is ironic. The definition is whole corridor. They slam that in there, whole corridor, but then at the workshop, we're told us that we need to target in our scope. So lesson learned there. Ensure our projects are located on priority 1 or 2 V-Trans segments, and only submit projects where the primary feature type mitigates an existing high V-Trans need. Not just a V-Trans need, type. Because the projects didn't score well if the need was low for that feature type. Also, we can perform approximate project scoring and preliminary criteria to ensure the project is competitive. So performance-based planning. Now, the other thing, a big thing, is coordinating better with VDOT, with consultant, the applicant, all of this. Better communication. This is a big one. Final cost estimates must be received much earlier. You know, last round, we got some on the day of the deadline, which was terrible for everyone.
Yes.
That's something for TAC to discuss. When do we want to require, if we can, the consultants to provide us the estimates? June 15th was thrown out. One thing we might want to do is prioritize the cost estimates for the larger projects that have to be validated, because VDOT needs time to validate them. Leverage funding flexibility so that when those cost estimate increases come back from central, it doesn't render applications non-competitive because we can't put more leverage funding on them. We need improved communication and coordination among all of us. And we need an improved transition from pipeline study to project application. That gets its own slide next.
Just stop 1 second before you go,
Sure.
because I just want
Do
to
you
do
want
this
to talk
before
about
you
this?
come back to it.
Absolutely.
So Carrie made a valid point there about the cost estimates. Now, in the pipeline studies, we've been saying that we need all our documents by the end of June because of the trouble we had last round. Cost estimates might be even a bigger problem, because if the estimate, and looking at VDOT, the cost estimate, I think if it's over 15 million or something, what is the cutoff whereafter you have to send it to central office for it to be validated? 15 million. So if the project in tier 2 is going to cost more than 15 million, it's not a case of just VDOT saying, yes, that's the correct cost estimate. It has to go for a second round of review to central office. We don't know how long that will take. And remember that in the crunch time leading up to the submission date, they're going to get requests, I'm assuming, from all the VDOT districts, which means there's going to be a bottleneck of staff availability and projects coming in. So that's what makes that item concerning, and why we want to look at that cost estimate separately from all the other documents we need from the consultants and the studies. Because if you have a project that's going to be more than 15 million, and as we move forward, I suspect that more and more of our projects are going to cost more than 15 million because things just get expensive. So those ones have to go to central office for a second review, which takes time, and we'll be in a queue with all those other districts. So I'm not sure, and I'm happy to hear suggestions, and so is Carrie, what we do about that. But I certainly think that we've got the time now to make a plan. By the time we get to next year, June, when everybody's panicking, is not the time to make the plan. The time is now. Now we should think this through and come up with something we think is likely to work for us. Thoughts, comments?
We can just go around the room. City, have you guys had any comments, questions on this?
I mean, what would VDOT's queue be on when to submit it, given the deadlines and bottlenecks and things like that? To get it in, beginning of the year, or, not sure what else we could do other than just wait on them.
There are pipeline studies, which is one category, and then there are projects that are not pipeline studies, which is a separate category. So there might not be the same answer for both.
I was just gonna add on that, with the pipelines that are under, are getting kicked off, so I think just for everybody in the group who is involved in those pipeline studies, just do everything that you can to keep things forward. And if you need something, reach out and request it so that we can make sure that it's not, well, I was waiting to get this, so I didn't do anything, because that's just gonna hurt ourselves. So we just want to be very proactive, and if there are things, outside of those pipeline studies, then, the sooner that you know what those projects are, it is not too soon to know what those projects are. So that's kind of the first point, that it is not too soon now. And then if you want to set up a meeting with us to discuss what those are, how you're approaching them, you know, what are you doing to try to get the information together? Because it makes it very difficult if something is submitted and we're not all on the same page about what that project is, what it means to include in that. So just the earlier that communication happens, better. And I do think, so for the central office reviews and validations, they're often reaching out to consultants. So those are gonna be, the consultant pool is finite, so it's the same consultants that we're all using, it's the same consultants, pipeline studies we're using, so it's just all, you know, even though they are reaching outside of the wall of the VDOT, it's still
So I guess the message is pick your projects as early as possible. Tell us what they are. Communication is essential. And if you have a project that's going to cost more than 15 million, which I think most of you will, those are the ones that we have to get the early cost on.
But if you don't know what those projects are right now, but you know you want to apply for something, it. Go through the transmap. Where are those, you know, spots that have the priority 1 and 2 meetings? So that, you know, there's some time to look at those things, because it's gonna be even harder if you don't really know, and then you're trying to come up with what the project is, that's.
Hey Kathy, what was the central office turnaround time last? Around 6?
Don't know, I have to go back and look at it. I mean, I don't think it's terribly long, but where it became a problem, especially, you know, with, I know Spotsy and Stafford both will look to the leverage. So to try to figure out what that dollar figure is, that makes it even harder because they.
Yes, unless we don't mess.
So what we're trying to avoid is an even bigger problem. It's that central office reviewed the cost estimates again, and in about the end of September, I forget the exact date, they then came back and said, oh, by the way, we're adding another 20 million to your project. Like, we can't have that. If we have that, this is all going to collapse. We've got to know that answer by the deadline in July, because you may wish to adjust the amount of leverage funding you put on that project before the last day in July when you submit. But if you don't know what the central office's final cost estimate is on that item by that date, you can't make that call. And that happened on a number of projects this past round. So the only way we can fix that is we push the cost estimating earlier and the review by central office earlier.
Yes.
Then you will get your revised cost estimate, say early July, mid-July, and you can then talk to your jurisdictions about adjusting up or down, usually up, your local match, so that the project still falls under 45 million, because frankly, if it goes over 45 million, it's not going to get funded. And I mean the ask, not the cost of the project. The project can still cost you 100 million. We don't care. What we care about is the amount you're asking smart scale for. That number must be less than 45 million if you hope to succeed. Better still if it's 27 million, but under, you know, you can't get a lot for 27 million. So if it's up to 45 million, it could still succeed if it's a good project. But let's say the central office says, oh, okay, it's actually 55 million, but they only tell you after the final deadline. You're pretty screwed. You can't fix it. There's nothing you can do.
So Kathy, is there an opportunity to send the central office our cost estimates in November?
Yeah, and we can reach out and talk to them about a timeline to
Yeah.
coordinate. And one of the things that I think we all need to keep in mind is that if whoever's doing the cost estimate, so whether that's a pipeline consultant or I know that you guys have hired consultants. So whoever's doing that, make sure that there's a lot of information backing it up. The summary that goes into the portal does not really tell anybody anything. It's like, okay, well, this percentage of the project went to this type of thing, but what did you estimate in that thing? And so if it's pretty clear as to where the estimate came from and how you accounted for the different risks and different categories, it will be easier for that review to happen, and it could also potentially keep them from adding additional contingencies if it's very clear as to what was like. They may look at something and go, well, you didn't account for this. So then, hopefully, again, if that's well defined, we can go back earlier and. But that is something that is gonna benefit everybody. I don't know that information all, portal, we can talk about that. That can be how in VDOT systems and project wise, where the folks that are doing the review get to it. And that's what we've done on different things, but if they want, more supporting information that just for the public portal gets to see, it's housed, in our project wide system, that's easy for somebody. And that's certainly share. So any of the information, like the supporting stuff, it may not go and that to us, so that we can put that with to know what.
Gotcha.
So more detail on the cost estimates is important.
Sorry. A question about that. So the consultants that are working on pipeline projects are completely up to date on the standards processes right now, but I think that maybe.
I think they are.
Everybody is, it's everybody where the documentation lives, how it was done, so. Presumably, I have seen some things where a consultant might look and say that, they don't know what kind of undercut may be needed. They could say, oh, well, it needs to be up to this much, it would cost that much, and then they'll put some type of a percentage onto that as your risk contingency, because they have to determine how likely is that to occur, or if there's some other thing that maybe they don't have the information. There are consultants, there are different tools that are available, do some early earthwork and some early actual quantities, so concept station is one. It's not widely used, I don't think at this point, but it can be used with some type of like a Google Earth type bit, so that actually get some very hidden in those two-dimensional drawings. If you're adding a turn lane to somewhere that's already flat and level, it's probably not a big deal, but if you're, adding a roundabout, that's. So there are some different tools and methods, and so there are examples of that manual. But again, there's a lot of that is going to be based on whoever's preparing it. Not a big bit, not really in there that I would encourage the right-of-way estimates. I think it's really helpful if police Spotsylvania's got one in a commercial area and they go, oh, we're gonna take out these 27 parking spaces. Identify that, on it is kind of in documentation so that those things can be accounted for. So, yes, it's land, but it's land that's currently being used for parking. And then if building being hit, or if so things like that the right-of-way estimator may not pick up on, much easier if you spell it out. And that way they can. The right-of-way piece of it is and so right-of-way is regional. So we are with Nova and Culpeper. So if whoever is doing a right-of-way estimate is also doing the right-of-way estimate for Nova and Culpeper, that gets to be a lot. So the sooner we can get it, it's better. And again, more detailed information we can give them at the beginning, the fewer assumptions they're making. Or,
And then back to that deadline, like you said, we're gonna definitely want to get it in sooner than later. But at that VDOT meeting we had and discussed the smart scale outcomes, that's why we made that comment. Can they extend that date past the deadline of submittal, at least 30 days, like they've done in previous rounds? So our boards can have some time to make some later decisions if needed. So, yes.
I love it. I live in hope.
I live in hope too. So hopefully CTV would take that into consideration.
Well, Carrie, do you want to jump onto the next?
Sure, next slide.
I had a lot to say about the pipeline to project. So, some slide. Pipeline study scope should match the scope of an eligible project, problem area and corridor versus the entire corridor. The locations should align with priority 1 and 2 locations, as that's been big. Preferred alternatives must include value engineering, i.e. not just the best solution, but perhaps the most economical solution. Preferred alternatives should consider which crash modification factors score more highly than others. The focus must tightly correspond with V-Trans needs. Timeline should fit better with smart scale. So, as we were talking about, the final cost estimate must be written much earlier, considering time for cost estimate validations on projects over 15 million. Consider delaying perhaps submitting pipeline studies as projects by 1 cycle to ensure this. So that's something we talked about too. Maybe pipeline studies that are going on right now should be for round 8, not round 7. Thing to talk about on this slide.
Covered most of the thing on the list.
So I was racing through the policy committee has trained me to be like, slow down for you guys.
The only thing I want to add on the value engineering, I think that's an important piece. But I think it's also a balance because we don't want to try to assume that everything is going to go right and that we can get waivers for certain things and we can do this and change, because then something may not work out as expected. So I would just say don't try to over value engineer the estimate at the very least, but look for that solution that is more efficient.
Well, I think value engineering and economy are not synonymous. It's striking that. Okay. So staff resources around the region. So what do we have to do? Perhaps we can allocate more STBG funds to planning for, more resources dedicated to pre-smart scale planning. We categorize projects in the CLRP as smart scale eligible or not, and apply appropriate screening and assessment for eligible projects using smart scale criteria. Now, this would only work for those projects. Other projects that are more suitable for other funding sources, such as TAC. That's an interesting idea. Campus staff and TAC could simplify the smart scale workshop info that we got to develop process for regional candidate project screening, preliminary assessment. That's something we're beginning to work on now. Consultants can be contracted to provide experience and expertise. Of course, they use the same data as WIPI. They provide engineering and cost. Campus staff can assist with project concepts, features, and applications for the regional list. And everyone, all of you, all of us, data crunching and information sharing, scoring metric calculations, and quantifying regional performance so we can all work together to choose our projects on analysis, on motion.
This is something which we're gonna have to, we're all technical people who work for elected officials, for the most, right? I know some like VDOT is not necessarily local elected officials, but you know what I mean. We may have to try to manage up, if you know what I mean. In other words, I really want my project for my locality because we never get anything. Might not be a good metric to put the project forward in smart scale because we can do it, we can put it in, and then it will fail because it isn't smart scale ready or because it doesn't meet a V-Trans need, and then it just fails, and then all we've done is wasted a slot. But I know that people need to show as elected officials that they're doing their work for their community. I completely understand that. I spent 14 years as an elected official. I know how this works. But we maybe need to focus minds on the V-Trans priority needs. And if there isn't a V-Trans priority need, it's just waste of effort. And secondly, if it's going to score badly and we're going to try and help with that process, all of us, not just Fampo Stop, but all of us are going to try and work on, you know, for getting an idea of how this thing's gonna score, and if it's going to really bomb out at like 1 point, we have to tell those collectively, we need to tell those elected officials, this one is going to just never get funded in a million years, we can't. Here's why.
Mhm.
So we may need to do some managing up so that we manage expectations, because people will get passionate about their project. I get passionate about projects that I'm interested in, like the Enon connector, as you know. But, you know, still you gotta be realistic.
We have to get clear in everyone's head the difference between a really good, worthwhile project that needs to happen and a successful smart scale project. These are not the same thing at all,
Yes.
but you need to understand. Excellent.
They can be the same thing with the right amount of money.
You can throw money at a problem, sure, but that, it's depending on how much money you have. I guess.
Some of them, they will just be the same thing. They'll just be really good projects.
Sometimes they are.
And then
sometimes
there's
they-
those that are only one of those two things, and you've got to deal with it.
Yeah.
All out your checkbook.
I like the backgrounds, by the way.
Yeah.
Sheldon Shop Road looks great.
You can play the, hey, where is this game? I'm having fun with that.
I think you better put the Enon connector next time, because I'm
Alright.
passionate.
That's the one that needs a lot of money.
That,
Not about it.
that one, the Harrison Road interchange and the river crossing, those are my three.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Okay. So, possible next steps. Institute a TAC subcommittee to further discuss the strategy and implement the items above. This subcommittee could also perhaps assess each other's projects, share outsider perspectives between regions, like, hey man, that project's gonna bomb, or yeah, you really got something there. Assist FAMPO staff to develop a screening tool using guidelines from the state and Brooke's presentation to select appropriate candidate project for a regional event. So this is something we're planning on doing for this round, is using analysis to screen projects before they go on our regional list, make sure we've got really strong. And consider concerns to present to the CPTV. Next slide. Now, there were a lot of these, and we are not going to present them all to the CPTV. We're going to have to think about this as a group and decide which ones we actually want. So things folks came up with. Is category B homogeneous? So you have these kind of smaller areas, and then you have Richmond, which completely wiped the awards. Correct any discrepancies in the VEDP and the UDA databases. The technical guide was released without a chance to comment. I think everybody was pretty upset about, and it was released way too late. I caught that too late to fix it, but thank you for that. The little L there is not yellow. Extend leverage funding commitment deadline past the application deadline we talked about. The hybrid economic development approach, the VETP sites are too restrictive currently. We must include major rezonings and site plans with a size threshold, so more people can get economic development points. Increase safety weighting, decrease accessibility for category B. Right now, this is really hurting. Consider the region's unique commuting population and amend accessibility metric. Does Hampton Roads or Nova share our concerns? How pipeline sites are selected, we have no input. Data used by OIP to determine congestion thresholds and etc. Like what data are they using? Does it make sense to us? And sites in our region of potential discrepancies between the VTrans need and local and regional transportation issues that we see on the ground. And you'll see my little asterisk over there. Before we go asking them to change metrics, we should confirm the results of individual metrics on our projects before going up there and change them. That's really important.
So just from my point of view, pick one and
Yeah.
run with that.
One or two, yes,
I-
like not
I-
15 or whatever this is.
Yeah,
But these are the things that people talk about.
and I'm not even going for two. One. Pick one and say, here's your exact reasoning. This will help us X, Y, and Z. And pick the one that'll help us all the best, obviously, but and just push that for the change.
So. I think we have to reduce this list. And we also have to. There's some work there because we have to. Assess what the impact of those metrics are before we go asking them to change them. So I'm trying to think now in terms of next steps.
So in terms of next steps, Carrie, if you could go back one slide. I think Carrie definitely noted what the next step should be, which is that first bullet.
Yeah, I think so.
And use that first bullet to cover the second bullet on here and the next slide.
Yeah, I think we need to say this.
Yeah.
More focused way.
So. The next question is when to do
And
that.
I'll say, I am not the chair. That would be Paul, and I'm also not going to be the next chair. That'll be Jamie. So I do think that's more of a discussion that should be had with them.
Okay.
In regards to these next steps. So perhaps Carrie, if we could work on this slide to combine some of these, just to reduce the bullets, like the two technical guide ones. Combine some of the bullets, like the two on the technical guide, put that into one bullet, things like that. And then bring this back at the next meeting, really just, in my opinion, and happy to hear any comments, these last two slides.
Yep.
These are our next steps. We want to review all of this in a subcommittee and then set up a plan, maybe staff will come back with what that plan is for the subcommittee.
Mhm.
Where we want to be and all that, and have that discussion with Paul.
I will take it upon myself to liaise with the three chairs of TAC about the meeting with us. To think through these things and work out which are the ones that hurt us the most.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing, is to find out what's really making it difficult for our projects to win.
And I think the
Yes.
data is there. You just need to mine it.
I know, instance for increasing safety weighting. I went through all of that and I did what we said, reducing accessibility, increasing safety. Didn't have any impact on us. It was like 0.02%.
Hmm.
So it's definitely something that we need to continue to look into and how we can change some of the ways that could or could not help us.
Gotcha.
Some of the things we just score 0,
Yeah.
like the VDB sites. We just
Mhm.
get so few of those that are actually near a project of ours that it's just a waste.
It is.
And then we get such low points for that particular part of the economic development score, it's just like 0. And that's a problem. Like if we can't score anything at all. So I think that broadening that may be an important issue. But as Matthew says, we really do need to think through the metrics and do a little bit of work.
Hmm.
I would also suggest if anybody has comments on these items, please send them to Carrie, can go get them all together as she gets slides for. We'll try and come back to the next PAC meeting with which recommendation from the chairs about holding a subcommittee. And hopefully Carrie will be able to take any comments that you get to email her and rework this slide to shorter and maybe focused on some things that we talk about in some.
Awesome. Well, from there, is there any other slides or is this it?
Next. I think this is the last one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
So if I could just add one thing, to add to something Ian said earlier about, there being some need for us to also manage up and to make sure that, we're trying to put forth those right projects and right concepts. But I think there's also really the need to engage boards, and everything, because sometimes a project that maybe has historically been a focus and a need, that may not be the current top of the list, for some of the board members. And so, we don't want to collectively be working on something that is no longer the top priority, to get that one in and then find out that that's not going to be something they want to apply for, or that they wanted to apply for the same thing. So the earlier that those communications can happen, the better. And I know that, there's all kinds of different dynamics with different localities, but just, the sooner that can happen, I think it would benefit all of us.
All right, awesome. Well, I think as always, please reach out to VDOT if you have questions about Smart Scale. They are your ultimate resource and they want you to ask questions. They want you to reach out. So please, earlier the better is always helpful. All right, we'll move on to item number 8, correspondence. We have 2 items today for our correspondence.
The first bullet, and I'll toss the second one to Mr. Ollis. This is a memorandum from Secretary Duffy to grant recipients, explaining how the new executive orders affect our grant management. That concludes that presentation.
If you read it, which I'm sure most of you already have, because you're very diligent and always read the TAC agendas before meetings. You'll realize that it's basically about DEI, basically saying, do not spend federal funds on DEI initiatives. That's my summary of it. And we're showing it to you because it's correspondence to FANFO. So there it is.
Sent to all localities
It was sent to all MPOs in the country
and localities.
All grant recipients.
and localities, and grant recipients.
Yeah.
I got it twice, but as an SS4A grant recipient and as an MPO. So there it is. Next one. This one, it might seem a little bit unusual, but I received this letter from an attorney who acts for a number of landowners and developers, both sides of the river. I'm sure most of you have heard of Charlie Payne. And he is responding to mostly the CTAC option, which was presented to the policy committee, and he's reacting on behalf of his multiple clients, and saying that they would not support, in fact, I think they would oppose the CTAC proposal because it doesn't sit well on their land plans. However, their plans are not approved by anybody at this stage. They are proposals that have been submitted to Stafford County, and they don't have an approved site plan, and they don't have an approved rezoning. There is a map attached to this folder. Further. So if you see those black outline, no, to the bottom, please. If you see those black outlines, that's on Stafford. The river is following that red line. If you look. Go on. Go on.
That one, right?
But if you look on the Stafford side of the river, stop moving it, please. You will see there the land parcels that they're planning to develop, and the blue line cuts through some of the proposed buildings that they want to erect, and so they're not very happy with that. They have suggested that we look at the access point for the gondola, which is in existence as a gap in the environmental easement. So instead of at the bottom of Celebrate Virginia Parkway, the road curving to the right, you're going south. If the roadway carries on straight and misses out that development, you follow the gondola pathway, which is a gap in the easement. Not super helpful at this stage because you still got to get across the river and then avoid all of the water. The environmental easements on the other side of the river are difficult to handle, and so you'd have an unusually shaped road if you had to do that. However, I'm just letting you know, because when we get official correspondence from an attorney that they may take issue, it does mean that potentially down the line they could take the court action. I'm not saying they will, but I'm just presenting this to you the same way we presented the city's overlay district and the wording that they put in to try and find a pathway through for the river crossing. I'm just letting you have this correspondence because I think forewarned is forearmed, and it's better for people to know rather than have stuff going on in the background that they don't know. So don't have to do anything with this information. I'm just letting you know that I received this correspondence. And I asked the person who sent it to me if I could share it with Rambo committees, and they said, yes, please do. So just letting you know. That's all that this is about.
And I'll just add on to that, both of these developments are known and were a part of policy game presentations last year, so it's nothing new here, other than CTAC's proposal, which is very similar to other options that have already been discussed. With that, move on to staff reports.
Eugene is off, sick today, so unfortunately not here to make this presentation. Lida, do you think you
Yeah.
would like to talk about it? What we want to do is just show you that we're working on this website update for Pampa. We're not hiring a consultant. It's not costing us any money. Thanks to Eugene, who is doing this themselves self here at Pampa. And we are using staff resources. Staff has already looked at the updates. And the CTAC, I think, had a similar presentation. So we're just showing you where we are today. And we're going to work it through all the committees. And then we're going to release it as the new Pampa website when everybody's had a chance to comment and give tips and input and so on. So please feel free to give us your tips.
Yeah, so this is just kind of a presentation with some summary, like slides of what the old website looks like versus what the new website is. So this was the old landing page when you first went to our website. This is what you see, but now it looks more like this. So first of all, it's a picture from our region, not random trains and things from other places. We thought that was important. And it overall, we have these icons to find some of like the most frequently visited pages, and there's fewer items in the like navigation at the top. Yeah, you can see here how many there were before. Now it's a little bit more like. Yes, yes. There's also each of the items that is in the navigation tab has its own web page. So right now you can only go to like a policy committee page, the TAC page, but now there's a committees page, like generally explaining the different committees. And from there you can navigate to each committee, or you can do it from the drop down there. And then each committee page is kind of the same. You all, if you visit the website to get the agenda or read the minutes, this is just moved up a little bit further. Yeah, this is also like a navigation panel on the side there. To click to those and it'll drop you down the page to the corresponding section. And public involvement page looks a little different.
The transitioning from a big wall of text, which is our public involvement, to that chart list faster without scrolling to the bottom of everything.
Oh yes, I'm kind of revamping the news page, which we've had, but having icons with that and keeping it updated as articles come out about what FAMPO is doing.
Can you just click on the sample website?
Yes. So on the agenda, there's also the link to the test website that you all can go visit and click around to see all those changes.
Scroll down. There.
Oh, yeah.
So each of the committees on the landing page has a tab that you can link to the committee webpage, which we think is nice and big and bold, and you don't have to fiddle around looking for it. The landing page has each of the committees with their own link straight into the page that is all the stuff for that committee. So that's kind of a nice layout thing which they takes you to all of that stuff. So the ask from us is that you look at it, play with it, and send us via email in the next 2 weeks any comments that you have, any improvements you think we could make, or if you really like it, tell Eugene they're doing a good job, whatever. But we'd like to have your comments. We're hoping by mid-year we can launch the new website with a little bit of a media. Here's our new website. And that photograph I took on my phone, so.
All right, we will move on to the second item under staff reports.
Okay, this is the last call for any SS4A or project applications from any localities other than Stafford and Spotsylvania. I sent to Caroline, King George, and the city the cost for road safety assessments. Haven't heard back from you, so I'm working hard with Spotsylvania and Stafford. We're on track to apply for a shoulder hardening project in both counties. A big project for Spotsylvania will be the full widening of Tidewater Trail between Glenda's Way and Benchmark Road. That will include pedestrian controlled traffic signal both at Glenda's Way and at Benchmark. Shared use path, sidewalk, transit pull-off. One of the first we'll see in that locality or in the region, I think. And as well as a youth safety program pilot for Massaquanix High School. The debrief from Federal Highways after review of our FY24 application said that we must have behavioral countermeasures, and the fatalities at Glenda's Way and Tidewater Trail did involve high school students that go to Massaquanix High School. So we're really pleased that behavioral countermeasure pilot will be included in that application. So that concludes my presentation.
When is the deadline exactly?
June 26th is the deadline for the grant application, but if you want to be included with me as your in this FY25 bundle, I need to know right now.
Like this week,
Okay.
we need to know if you have another project you want to add, because we have to prepare the documents and work out the cost and all of those other things. It's submitted, it takes time. We thought this program was dead with the new administration, but they put out a call for projects, so it's not dead, and this is our chance.
And I'm talking to her tomorrow, not an official conversation, just kind of a side note, we talk about budget planning, so I don't
Good.
expect anything further other than.
And I know you and VDOT are working together to just sharpen the routes and context.
All right, any agency reports? Come on, someone's got something. Just a couple notes from Stafford. We have two projects starting construction up on Route 1, locally administered projects, one at Route 1 Courthouse Road and Bell's Hill Road. That will be a new median, so no more left turns into the government center for anyone who does that. And then improvements up at Route 1 Telegraph Road and Route 1 Woodstock Lane are starting as well. So just
So courthouse, give us one, we're gonna start.
Courthouse US 1 will start later on in May, later on in probably late May or June. And then Telegraph Woodstock should be starting here shortly. We do have a public meeting this Thursday for the Route 1 Courthouse project. If anyone does wish to attend, it's at the County Government Center for our meetings.
What we'd like to do is, and what Eugene would like to do is let the public know via our social media. So if you all guys can send Eugene something, anything that just says, hey, tomorrow or next week, this thing is starting, Eugene will put it out on our social media, which helps spread the word. That people might want to avoid that area during construction, so if you guys know.
Yeah,
we'll do that.
definitely. Yeah, and there shouldn't be, Route 1, there's always gonna be a lane open, so there's gonna be some traffic, but nothing significant. And then also, we talked about Smart Scare earlier, Stafford County has started 2 studies. Anyone has any things on Garrison Road or Warrenton Road, they wish to make note of, we have 2 surveys out right now, closing May 16th. We've already gotten 4 co-hunter responses, so good to go so far.
Do you know if Eugene has any?
It just went out late last week, so I'm not sure, but I'll reach out to community engagement to see if they do. Anybody else have anything further before we adjourn this meeting?
So our new routes go into effect in May 19th for Spotsylvania County. So we're doing quite a few route adjustments and we will be hitting the PA hospital.
Awesome.
Again, we could send Eugene anything we have on that. Then we,
Next Wilson.
okay, we'll send it out on our social media.
VDOT spring transportation meetings tomorrow night, district auditorium, starts at 4.
Our pipeline study on 218 opens up with Wednesday, it's 14-day period. But I know that's a commuting path probably with folks from Southern Stafford to get to Dahlgren, so that may be very important for this.
I think many, if not all, the pipeline studies are opening this week for surveys. So. All right, anything else? Cool. The meeting right before 11 a.m. So.
Yeah.